Good morning, Kevin. I hope you're well. I hope you're enjoying your time down at Field Studies Camp. Today we are looking at Pythagoras' theorem and 2D problems. Now, I'm not overtly concerned with these kind of questions, Kevin, because they are quite challenging. They're really wordy. We have to try and change those words that we can read into a diagram. I know that's something that often we find quite challenging. I'm going to read the question out to you. I want you to think about the right angled triangle and where perhaps the measurements could go, and then perhaps how we could use that Pythagoras' theorem to find those sides. So, example 1, let's have a look at this one on its own to start with. A 5-meter ladder leans against a 3-meter wall. How far is the ladder from the base of the wall? So, let's just think about this to start off with as a right angled triangle. Okay, so we have a wall and it says that's a 3-meter wall. So wall is vertical, right? It's up and down. So this would be my wall of 3 meters. Now the ladder, of course, is that ladder that leans against the wall so we can kind of climb up that wall. That ladder is 5 meters. And that makes sense because that's called the hypotenuse and it needs to be the longest side. And it's asking us to find how far the ladder is from the base of the wall. So let's call this X meters here. So that measurement here that we're highlighting in blue, that's the one that's asking me to find. So let's think about our Pythagoras' theorem. That's the first thing I always want you to write down. So our theorem says a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. So remember, that's our theorem where a and b are the two smaller sides and c is the longest side. Our next step, of course, is to take those three values and put them into that equation. Now, of course, the a and the b are the two smaller sides, so they would be the x and they would be the 3. And then the c, of course, is our hypotenuse. In this case, it is 5. So my first line of working, and that is where we will be given a mark for our working, is that statement there. Now, depending on what you would like to do, sometimes you might like to square the numbers out on your calculator to say x squared plus 9 equals 25, okay? And then like last lesson, we want to solve this equation by getting rid of that plus 9 so that the x squared is on its own. What's the opposite of plus 9? Well, it becomes a minus 9, which gives us x squared is equal to 16. Now, you may have taken the 3 squared across to the right-hand side, Kevin, before you actually did that squaring process. That's what we looked at last lesson. You can do that. There's no problems at all in doing that first. Either way, then you do it on your calculator, of course, and 5 squared minus 3 squared will still make 16. Now remember, this is what we get, x squared equals 16, but we don't want x squared, we want x. So what did we say last time? What's the opposite of a square? Well, we said it's that square root button, okay? So we press that square root button, we type in 16, we press equals, and we end up with the answer of 4. I'm going to put little meters next to it, and that there becomes my final answer. I'm going to put that there in blue, because that would be the answer, okay? It would be 4 meters from the base of the wall. So again, these are harder questions because now it's not just a triangle, okay? They give us some words and we need to create the triangle from those words, and that's really important. So always start with your right angled triangle and then try and figure out where these need to go. Okay, now feel free, if you want to have a go at these two questions before I actually go through them, by all means, you're most welcome to do so. Otherwise, just follow on with me. What size ruler can fit inside a rectangle with dimensions of 20 centimeters by 30 centimeters? So what are some key words here? Well, first of all, we have a rectangle. So let me draw out that rectangle. Looks something like this. Okay. So we've got a nice little rectangle there. We want dimensions 20 centimeters by 30 centimeters. So I'm going to put the shorter length here and the bigger length here. That's what dimensions mean. It means how long are each of the sides. Now, technically speaking, I really need to look at 2 of them, but I can put them on all 4 if you would like. But it says, what size ruler can fit inside the rectangle? Well, think about the ruler, right? We want the biggest size ruler. I probably should have said what biggest size, shouldn't I? I probably should have been a bit better with that question. What biggest size? Because obviously you could fit a really small one in there. We want the biggest one we could find. Now, think about the hypotenuse, which is the longest side of a triangle. So we kind of can fit that kind of ruler right from one corner to the other corner. And that's technically what we're trying to find the value of. And you can see a right angled triangle sits in there. So realistically, Kevin, what we're kind of looking at is we're simply looking at that triangle. Now, if you would like to draw that triangle out like this, then absolutely you can do that, okay? You could write the X there, you could write 30 there, you could write the 20 there. It's the same kind of diagram, okay? But either case, the first step is always to write down your rule. A squared plus B squared is equal to C squared. Now we're going to write those two lengths in, the 30 and the 20. So 30 squared plus 20 squared is equal to C squared. Now this is a nice question, isn't it? Much nicer than the last one because we can just add those together. So on my calculator, I'm going to type in 30 squared button. Remember your squared button is that little button that looks like that. So 30 squared, I'm going to press plus there, and I'm going to type in 20 squared. I'm going to press equals, and we get C squared, or we could say X squared, of course. Let's write X squared. I probably should have written X in there, shouldn't I? Okay, so X squared equals, that's a big number, 1300. Now remember, we want what X is. So we're going to press that square root button on our calculator. So square root, type in 1300, press equals, and I get 36.0555 ... Now I didn't ask for a rounding there, Kevin, so we can just do it to the nearest whole number. 36 centimeters would be correct. So the biggest ruler that I could put into that rectangle there would be a 36 centimeter rectangle. So again, see what I've done? I've drawn out my right angled triangle. I put my measurements in. I wrote my rule out. I subbed the numbers in, and then I answered the question. Okay, one more question to go. Again, a lot of words there. If you want to pause and have a read of it, you're most welcome to. Otherwise, just follow on. A swimming pool is, oh, there we go, look at that, is rectangular in shape with dimensions 50 meters by 10 meters. What size rope will I need to tie from one corner diagonally to the other? Well, I've got to be honest, Kev, this is almost the same question as the one before. Okay, there's my rectangle. That's my pool. We know it's 50 meters long and 10 meters that way. I'm going to tie a rope from one corner diagonally to the other corner. And we want to find out how long that is going to be. So can you see my triangle again? I might try and color this one in so I don't have to redraw it. That's my my right angled triangle. I'm going to just ignore the other part of it. Okay, so remember, we always want to draw a diagram first, Kevin, whenever we can. Now, we go back to like a normal question. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. I'm now going to put in the two smaller sides for the A and the B. So 50 squared plus 10 squared equals X squared. Now, nicer question, isn't it? Because we just have to plus them together. So grab my calculator out. I'm going to type in 50 squared plus 10 squared. And we get X squared equals, oops, not 3,600, 2,600 meters. That's a lot, right? But of course, that's what X squared is. So let's square root again, that button there, that little square root button. I'm going to press it. It's next to the squared button. I'm going to type in 2,600. I'm going to press equals, and I get 50.99 0.01 dot 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 goes on forever. So we could say to the nearest meter, it'd be 51 meters, and that would be my answer. So you can see that the rope's not that much longer than the edge of that pool. But again, that's exactly how I would answer that question. Okay. Each time with any of these questions, I know they're a little bit wordy and they're ones that we find challenging. Just read it carefully. Try and draw your right angle triangle out. Try and put the sides in that you're being given and identify which one you're looking for. Once you've got your triangle, these are like all the class questions from the last two lessons. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Put your sides in and then try and solve that equation. Have a great day. I hope you're well.